You begin with a certainty. Loss is an interruption in life, a removal of what gave meaning. Something ends and you call it misfortune, yet Ibn Arabi challenged this conviction. He suggested that loss is not an external event but an unveiling. What disappears was never truly owned. What remains was never absent. He asked whether grief is born not from loss itself, but from the belief that reality belongs to us. When that belief collapses, something unexpected appears, an awareness not dependent on what was kept or gone. You start to ask, if nothing truly belongs to you, then what is it that loss takes away? And if awakening follows, is it because something is found, or because something false finally falls? Ibn Arabi lived in 12th century Andalusia, a world of intersecting faiths and philosophies. He absorbed the intellectual diversity of his time, seeking not division but coherence. In his monumental Meccan Revelations, he explored being as a single, all-encompassing reality. To him, multiplicity was only a mode of expression, countless faces of one essence. Even what appears as loss was part of this unity. The world did not contain fragments, it contained movements within one indivisible whole. From that vision, Ibn Arabi asked, how can one thing truly vanish if nothing ever departs from being? You think loss hurts because something yours has been taken. But what is ownership except a mental boundary? You say my life, my past, and my beloved. Yet each of these shifts appears and withdraws. Ibn Arabi revealed that the sense of possession depends on separation. You can only own what you believe stands apart. But if all forms belong to the same reality, the separation is only conceptual. What then have you ever truly possessed? If loss merely removes an illusion of ownership, it does not destroy, it clarifies. When the idea of mind dissolves, what remains to be lost? Something vanishes and the mind reacts. It wants continuity, not interruption. Yet in that interruption, awareness is forced to confront itself. Ibn Arabi pointed to this moment as the beginning of insight. What disappears may not be reality itself, but your version of it. The withdrawal of a form exposes the structure of attachment. You begin to see that loss is not the destruction of life, but a disruption of assumption. When the familiar ceases, perception begins. Could it be that disappearance is not the negation of existence, but the first recognition of what does not vanish? Ibn Arabi described existence as unfolding between two domains, the real, unchanging, absolute being, and the imagined, where differences appear. The imagined is not false, it is relative. Everything you call mine belongs to this dimension of appearance. It comes and goes. The real does not. When imagination fades, you call it loss. Yet what fades is only a shifting image, not the essence that sustains it. To awaken is to see both, the world of change and the ground that never changes. You suffer then not from loss itself, but from mistaking the image for what is real. What happens when you stop making that confusion? Awareness watches the rhythm of arising and fading. Ibn Arabi saw this watching as the essence of awakening. In every moment something appears and something disappears. You notice that awareness remains constant through both. The observer does not come or go. What you lose belongs to movement. What you are belongs to stillness. When you identify with the passing, loss feels personal. When you rest in awareness, loss becomes instruction. You begin to ask, if awareness observes the cycle of loss and renewal, who is the one that mourns? Can what witnesses ever be diminished by what it witnesses? For Ibn Arabi, everything that departs also returns. Not to another place, but to its origin in being. What seems like an ending is a reconfiguration. The world does not move from existence to non-existence. It moves within existence. Each disappearance is a return to the unseen, not an escape from it. You begin to see that loss participates in the same order as birth, change, and continuity. If all things return to the real, then loss is not separation but completion. How then could awakening arise from anything other than the rhythm of return? Love, Ibn Arabi said, is the principle that sustains all existence. It manifests as attraction, recognition, and the desire for unity. Yet love becomes pain when it confuses unity with possession. To love without grasping is to see the real acting through all forms. When you release the claim of ownership, love becomes pure perception, an acknowledgement, not a demand. What you once called loss is simply love returning to its source. You do not stop loving. You stop clinging. Detachment, then, is not coldness. It is the clarity that allows love to endure without needing control. Could that be awakening disguised as grief? Absence instructs where presence cannot. Ibn Arabi described it as a subtle teacher. When something withdraws, it reveals the conditions of your awareness. You discover how much of your certainty depends on presence. When that presence ends, knowledge deepens. The mind learns to distinguish the real from the imagined. Absence exposes what cannot disappear, the field of being itself. You start to recognize that nothing is truly missing. What seemed gone has only changed its mode of appearing. Is loss then deprivation? Or is it the language through which truth makes itself known? You began as the one who experiences loss. You searched for meaning, insight, or consolation. But Ibn Arabi revealed that the seeker and the sought are not separate. The I that claims experience is itself an appearance within being. The real does not need to search for itself. When this becomes clear, the very structure of seeking dissolves. Awareness no longer looks outward or inward. It simply recognizes what remains is not attainment but quiet understanding. The seeker disappears and only seeing remains. In this recognition, loss and discovery merge. If there is no one left to awaken, can awakening still be called an event? Now the meaning of loss shifts completely. You see that loss was never destruction. It was revelation. What fell away were the constructs of possession, identity, and separation. What remains is unconditioned awareness, the constant background Ibn Arabi called the real. You do not awaken to something new. You awaken from what was false. There is no gain, only recognition. The cycle of having and losing, of seeking and finding resolves in simplicity. The real was never absent. Loss merely cleared the path for you to know it. When nothing can be lost, understanding rests. And in that rest, the mind no longer asks. It simply knows being was always whole. The journey began with fear, the belief that loss diminishes existence. It ended in recognition that loss is the mind's word for transformation within unity. Through Ibn Arabi's lens, every event of loss becomes a movement of awareness toward its source. You learn to question possession, to examine absence, and to see that awakening is not escape but clarity. The I that suffers is revealed as a temporary construct, and the real as its unchanging ground. The narrative concludes not in emotion but in comprehension. There was never a separation to heal, nor a loss to recover from. The one reality was always complete, and awakening is simply the moment that knows this to be true.